I also find for the business owner, really thinking about like, what do I want to build and why am I building it? That allows us to also answer the questions of like, is what I'm currently doing working? Because sometimes we just do the things that we're doing because we've been doing them or somebody told us to do them that way. And through that process, you can be like, actually, this isn't working. This isn't moving me towards my vision. We really need to look at this differently. So there's a lot of stuff that vision casting part helps to answer, but being able to paint a picture of what you want and what you want your business to be, that for me helps frame everything about the budget. Because if you tell me that one specific thing is super important in that vision casting piece, that's what I need to make sure that we figure out how to problem solve and make the budget support that, or make sure that we're growing in a direction that's in alignment with that. So I really love that part. I actually think it's my favorite part of the process.
Hey, you leader, entrepreneur, business owner, solopreneur, whatever you call yourself, we know you're a visionary business builder, wealth seeker looking to combine a passion for doing good with leading consciously. It's time to shift from a traditional focus of pure wealth accumulation to one that integrates well-being and fulfillment. This is the Conscious Edge podcast, and I'm Alecia St. Germain, entrepreneur and coach. Along with my friend and wellness advocate, Jonathan Duggar, we're diving into what it means to embody radical self-acceptance while still evolving to lead with compassion and kindness. We're sharing our own experiences and expertise as we unpack imposter syndrome, perfectionism, procrastination, and all the other things that lead to burnout and keep you from experiencing pure joy, business growth, and maximum impact. This is a safe and supportive space to explore what it means to be a human creating wealth and building a business. You're here for a purpose, and it's time to shine your light. So here we go. Well, as you have been probably diving into your finances and getting everything ready for tax season, by the time this episode is published at this point, you may have already filed your business taxes, but you may also have that scramble where you're trying to put things together and send over to your CPA, or maybe you've got a handle on that. But if you've been listening for any amount of time, you know that I recently had some challenges with my bookkeeping. And I have been talking to you about my knight in shining armor, if you will. She's amazing. I am so blessed that I found her when I did, but I have Jenn Baas with me from Peak to Peak Solutions. And I'm like so pumped to have you here today, Jenn. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be with you today.
Yes. So we are going to talk all things finance.
Yay.
But today I wanted to give everyone an update of the work that you and I have been doing, because I've been bragging about you to everybody listening. And it's been really fascinating to start and go through your process. I hired you as a bookkeeper after my experience with Bench dropping me very suddenly. And if you are someone who is looking for a bookkeeper, Jenn has got a huge waiting list. So she's not available. Sorry.
Sorry.
You can email, but you will be on a waiting list. But that's one of the things that Jenn and I have been talking about is she's so brilliant. What she does is so helpful for entrepreneurs, especially small business owners. And she has such a heart for small business owners and entrepreneurs. And sometimes the kind of knowledge that she has isn't always available to smaller businesses. And so we've been behind the scenes, like game planning. How can we get you to have access to Jenn's brain and not have it take it so that you can't sleep at night, Jenn? Because, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So let me start by just saying, gosh, there's so much I want to talk about with you.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that you would describe what you and I are doing? What is the coaching I just knew I needed it. I was like, yes, I'm in. Give me the biggest thing you have. I want the most support. Yes, I want your time.
Absolutely. So I offer what I call a budgeting and planning program, and that's what you and I are doing together. And so what I do with folks with that is walk through planning out a vision for your year and then creating a budget surrounding that and then creating some accountability and checkpoints along the way to see how we're doing and how, if we're staying on track or if we need to adjust that plan as we move forward through the year. So I find it really common where business owners, they get to the end of the year and they can say that the year went better than expected or worse than expected, but they don't really understand why. They just know that they kind of are where they are. And it's a bit of a mystery.
Yeah.
And everybody kind of knows like we should have a budget, and that's kind of a thing people talk about and some people do. But what I do with this program is try to put together a more complete perspective of, first of all, starting with asking what we want the year to be. Like, what's your vision for it? What do you want to build? What do you want to grow? What do you want to do from that perspective so that we can build a budget and a plan that really aligns with that and serves that goal? Because sometimes it's not just strictly about the numbers. It's about what we're building and about why we're building it and other goals that might come into place. And then having that process and accountability throughout the year to stay on top of it, be able to make adjustments if things aren't going to plan so that we can still achieve an outcome that we really feel good about at the end of the year.
Awesome. So when we met, it was so fascinating because I think I've already done a lot of work to work through the shame that I have and times I had debt and how I handled my taxes. But I remember when we sat and spoke for the first time and I just laid out for you all of my dirty laundry and you said to me, "Oh, that's so common. That is so common. You're not alone." One of the things that I think is really true of a lot of entrepreneurs, and you hear it, so you tell me if I'm on base, but it's like we know how to make money, but we don't know what to do with it necessarily really well once we get it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's super common. And I explain it to people because I think people do carry a lot of shame. They're like, I run this business, I do this thing, but my finances are a mess, or I don't understand my numbers. That's so common. And there's a lot of shame around that. But if we step back and think about it, most people go into business because they love doing a thing, or they want to do that thing outside the construct of being a W-2 employee. And they don't necessarily have the background in how to run a business, how to manage people, how to manage finances, how to do bookkeeping. That's not necessarily something that ever comes to mind when you go to start a business, and you just kind of do it and survive as you go. And then all of a sudden realize, wow, this whole piece isn't really working and I don't understand it. So I think that holds a lot of power over people, but I would love for people to understand and give themselves grace that, in my opinion, like, you probably shouldn't have that figured out. It's rare, right? To have that person who has this really strong business background and also is an entrepreneur. That's not always something that goes hand in hand. So it's very common.
Yeah. And I just wanted to really make sure that the listeners hear that, because it's something that has a hold on people, and it's almost like this dirty secret. And then once I started telling people, I couldn't believe how many people were reaching out to me and just saying like, "Oh my gosh, same. And it's such an empowering place that to reach out to someone like you for help. And then I used to have a story that I wasn't good with numbers. And I think I shared that with you. And I was like, I'm kind of tired of buying my own story. Like, this is silly. This is not an excuse for me to limp along and just have this, not really have an understanding of what I'm choosing to spend money on to grow the business, why. And then also, I think a lot of entrepreneurs, they take whatever's left for themselves.
Yes.
And so they start to wonder why they're working harder than they've ever worked in their life. And they're happy. They're like so happy that they're working at what they love, but then not actually personally reaping the benefits that they thought that they would be.
Absolutely.
Is that?
And I see that, I would say 80% of the people that I talk to are either not paying themselves at all and haven't for a long time, sometimes even from the start of working for themselves, or they're in some sort of phase where it's scaled back, or they've had to stop paying themselves, or they're not paying themselves as much as they want to. And like you said, they love what they do, but they're like, this just isn't, it's not working. We're 5 years in, and my spouse is going to have a problem if I can't start making this make more sense financially.
Yeah. Make it sustainable.
Yeah. Sustainable.
Yeah. So that was, I think, one of the first things that we talked about. And what I found to be, I don't know, it broke my brain is all I can say, is like you went through last year's last year's expenses and revenue. You organized it in a way that made sense, not the way that my bookkeeper did it, but in a way that made sense where I could see what the numbers meant. Like we talked about, well, walk me through what, like you were going to say it better than I am. You just guided me through. So we started with like revenue, I remember, and you asked me.
So we start at the top, and this is really like in working through a financial statement called the profit and loss, or you might hear it called the income statement. And at the very top of that statement, we're going to see your income or your revenues reported. It's going to be that gross revenue or that top line amount you're collecting. One change that I made compared to how Bench was doing it is we broke your revenue down into the different revenue streams coming in. It's not incorrect to have one revenue line. There's nothing wrong with that. But in my perspective is how do we take the financials and make them useful and give you really good information so that you can make decisions that guide your business from that mindset. And so I think it's really important to understand where your key revenue streams are coming from. Where do you make the money? Just because it gives you information or might guide you to make different decisions in the future. So we start with that at the top. We broke some stuff out so you understood instead of just one big number, here's actually what those numbers are coming from. And then underneath that, we've got what's called a cost of goods sold section or cost of services if you're in a service-based business. And the way of thinking about that is what is the true cost of generating that revenue? So if we're a manufacturer and we make widgets, we would have the cost of manufacturing those widgets, and that becomes part of cost of goods sold. That can include parts. It could include different software. It could include people. So anything that's really directly related to producing that revenue is going to be up in the cost of goods sold section. What that lets us do is understand how much money are we actually making directly from that revenue. That's going to be called our gross margin. So you'll hear like gross margin, gross profit, those are the same two numbers. What's the margin on what you're selling or what you're delivering? And that just means how much money do you have after you've paid for what it takes to produce that revenue.
Yeah, that was an aha for me. I was like, that was fascinating. And of course, being in the coaching side of things, we were able to establish really that the cost to deliver what I do, I have really, really great margins, right? So I have really great margins and now question, where's all the money going, right? So sometimes I think that was so helpful to break that down to see what was necessary at like the core. And then some of the other costs that we broke down that were other things. I don't know if you want to explain that a little bit. Some of the other costs that we broke out.
Yep. So we broke out some software, like the software that it takes to deliver your consulting services. So that's a cost. We've got, for example, the retreat that you just did that I went to was totally amazing. Everyone should go. Plug for the retreat. So the cost of that retreat. So again, in the revenue section, we're going to see revenue that you earned from doing that retreat. And then we're going to see the cost specifically associated with that retreat so that we understand how much money did the retreat make? What's that margin there? And then let's see, I'm trying to remember what else we had. The software was one of the main things, the retreat costs. If you would ever do any paid speaking engagements and you have like travel and things related to that, that would fit up in cost of goods sold. if you ever had like a co-consultant or something like that, somebody who's helping deliver consulting services or you're bringing in, again, that's a part of generating that top line revenue. And those are all going to be up there.
Hint, hint. Jen and I are working on some stuff. So she might be a cost of goods.
I might be there. I might be on your P&L. I'm the line item.
And then we had all the other expenses for running the business. Now, I did have a question, kind of a side question, because there are a number of listeners who also invest in real estate. And you have a real estate background too. By the way, we didn't even talk about all of the background that you have. So you actually have a lot of knowledge base around running a business around real estate as well. Is it very similar or is it different?
Yeah. I mean, these principles, like that structure is going to be the same in every company. It's just going to be what shifts into those categories is going to shift around a little bit. So for example, if we use real estate as an example, your revenue might be the sale of a property. It might be rental revenue. Any of those various top line revenue streams are all going to flow into that revenue section. And then let's just use rental. That one's an easy one. So you've got a rental property, you've got rent income that's coming into that top section. What I like to do, and not everybody does it this way, but I like to have those property costs in cost of goods sold because those are direct property costs. You know, maybe it's your mortgage payment, your utilities, repair and maintenance, management, all of that in a cost of goods sold section so that I can see what does this property generate before we're talking about other administrative things that are separate from that.
Okay.
And that's really the goal, is identifying what's truly the cost of the revenue versus the cost of overhead or operations. So, you know, what's your phone bill? What's computer? What's software that's related to administering your office or your business? And by separating that out, we get more clarity between the cost of the revenue versus the cost of operating.
The fascinating thing is I have taken accounting classes like in college and as part of some of those things. And none of this stuck in my brain, nor did I understand actually how it applied. And it was like working with you and the way that you explain things, you make it so accessible to the entrepreneurial brain.
I'm so glad to hear that.
Okay. So as we're going through, we go through, you analyzed everything. You showed me kind of what things meant. And then this was the part that was so fascinating. I had last year talked to Nikki Fraser in one of the previous episodes. She's the one that started to really open me up to the idea that budget is not constricting.
Yeah.
That it's a plan for growth. And so you started with vision, which was, I'm like, I start with vision all the time in mindset coaching, like what's your vision? But you started with vision as well. And you asked me about my vision and we started to estimate what was involved in my vision financially. And we started budgeting for that and creating a projected budget for this year based on that vision, which I thought was, I don't know that people do that. I think people look at, here's what we made last year. Here's what I think I can make. And so now I'm going to keep all my costs inside of what I think I can make instead of being like, hey, let's shoot for the stars. And then the question was, what did I need to do to close any gap that there was financially? It was so much more expansive. I don't know if I explained that well, but
no, yeah. I think for me, the reason why I've started doing that, because I haven't always done it that way. A lot of what I do comes really organically from like what's missing or what I feel like makes it work better. But I find a lot of times people create a budget in one of two ways. They either start with the prior year and they just duplicate it. And they're like, well, this is what we did last year and we're just going to do that again and see what happens. Or they just pick a number that they really like. Usually it's very fancy and shiny and they just want to grow by 30%. And that's just what they want to do. And so that just becomes the budget. And then everything is built off of that. I like to start from like, what are you building? I want to understand your mindset to your business because everybody's really different. Like I actually have a client. I love her. She's amazing. And she's not financially motivated at all. She could care less. She just loves doing what she does and helping people. So the way that I frame and we work on financial concepts with her is really different than somebody who's very financially motivated. And so for me, it's very helpful, but I also find for the business owner really thinking about like, what do I want to build and why am I building it? That allows us to also answer the questions of like, is what I'm currently doing working? Because sometimes we just do the things that we're doing because we've been doing them or somebody told us to do them that way. And through that process, you can be like, actually, this isn't working. This isn't moving me towards my vision. We really need to look at this differently. So there's a lot of stuff that vision casting part helps to answer, but being able to paint a picture of what you want and what you want your business to be, that for me helps frame everything about the budget. Because if you tell me that one specific thing is super important in that vision casting piece, that's what I need to make sure that we figure out how to problem solve and make the budget support that, or make sure that we're growing in a direction that's in alignment with that. So I really love that part. I actually think it's my favorite part of the process and just helps the success.
It was a game changer because I've been that person. Jonathan and I have done previous episodes. By the way, everyone, I met Jenn because of Jonathan.
Yeah.
So, and then Jenn and
He's amazing. Yeah.
Just like any other extrovert, like the way introverts make friends is an extrovert finds them and then decides that they are theirs and they will keep them. And so that is me, the extrovert. And I was like, nope, Jenn is mine. I will keep her. She is mine forever. So Jonathan, we talked about in previous episodes about instead of setting goals, like set intentions and why maybe goals really sabotage people in some ways. And what I really hear you say is that people set goals because the ego thinks it looks good or because it's what they're supposed to do. And we address that, but it's a big reason I see people not hit their goals. And I have done that. And it's so demoralizing every time you don't hit a goal and you don't understand why you're not hitting it. And then here you come in with like the numbers and you show how that number is actually related to the vision. You make that number actually mean something and you give it a heart, like a heartbeat.
Aw, yeah. And it should have one, right? Like, this is your business. It's your life. It's what you do. And I think feeling connected to that. And also, actually, like, I really don't like the word budget because so many of us have negative, constrictive associations around it, right? Like we have that kind of old school thought process around it. And it's meant to like contain and limit. And certainly like some managing expenses is important, right? So there's an aspect to that. But the way that I like to see it is this is just a plan. It's nothing more. It's nothing less. It's just a plan. And having that budget and that framework actually gives us flexibility to make adjustments and to be flexible through the year. So for me, it's, of course, there's an aspect of like, okay, we need to stay in these numbers to make it make sense. Yes, we can kind of put that aside. But what happens when the year doesn't go to plan? Most typical budget situations, it's like, again, shame. It's, oh my gosh, I'm over budget here. I'm not hitting my revenue goals. It's sucking and I don't know why. And that's kind of what it ends up being. Yeah. So that's most people's associations with it. For me, my framework is all about like, this is just a starting point. And now what do we need to shift or what's coming up or how is reality changing? And then it empowers you to then make different decisions. So if it's not working, you can change it. You can make adjustments. You can be flexible with it. And I think that's a really different way of looking at it that hopefully feels better and more expansive and flexible than traditional budgeting.
As we were going through, and I remember having those conversations with you, we talked about what I invest to create this podcast. And I said to you, and then there was what I wanted to, the goal, my goal in working with Jenn was really to increase my personal salary that I was bringing in to my family, because I had this realization that last year I paid contractors out 3 times what I paid myself. Now, you helped me also understand that that was allowing me some time that I was using to take care of kids and be the mother that I wanted to be. And so you really did help me reframe, because I could have very easily been like, this is so unfair. I paid contractors 3 more times more than I paid myself. But you're right. That was also to allow me this time and space to bring someone with an expertise in that made it go faster, helped me build what I needed to build in order to provide the best service that I could for my clients. And I was off doing other things. So the goal this year, though, was to flip things a little bit and make sure that I was starting to hit some personal goals that we have for our family financially. So that was a main thing. But I did say to you, I'll take less if I can keep podcasting at the level that I'm podcasting.
It's such again, for me, it's not about, I think people expect me to come in and tell them like, you can't afford to do that. It's not my job, I feel like, is to show you the impact of the decision and then let you make a choice, right? So if we use podcasting as an example and you want to do it, it costs XYZ to produce this podcast this year. I want to just show that to you. This is then what your projected income looks like at the end of the year. Are you comfortable with that? Do you want to make a different decision? Do we need to make a decision in a different area that helps support that? So it's really, and even using your example about the subcontractors for last year, you kind of, I think, got to the end of the year and were like, wow, I paid them more than I paid myself. If we have that budgeting process in place, then it's more of a planned decision on the front side of, I need to invest in my website this year to have some infrastructure or whatever the case may be. The implication is I'm going to make less money this year. But that's a choice I'm making because I'm investing in my business. So it's really about shifting that framework, making it more of an intentional choice and kind of accepting the outcome, or changing the choice or making different choices to help improve that outcome if we need it to.
Yes. And I love that, because then it's not a surprise. It put me in such a position of power, really, to make those choices and not just be swept into whatever impulsive decision I'm not saying it was an impulsive decision, but
Of course. Yeah.
Sometimes it has been. That's
well, and I hear that super free. I would say one of the other top things I hear in talking to people is they get an opportunity and it seems like a really great opportunity. It's usually around advertising for some reason. That comes up a lot. And they check the bank account and there's money in the bank account and they just decide to do it. And if we walk through that process a little bit differently, you might make the exact same choice. But what happens is you really understand the implication.
Yeah.
And you might evaluate it and say, okay, this new advertising source is going to bring me in. I'm going to be over budget here. So I'm going to make X amount less than I thought this year. But it's also going to bring in this new lead flow. And that's worthwhile to me to invest in that. Versus, again, kind of getting to the end of the year and you're like, what happened? Where did all the money go?
Yeah, exactly. So there was that piece that was fascinating. And then it was really neat to see this new salary built in. And instead of me being the last thing, what I get paid being the last thing, it was like, no, like, I think it was something like, here is the deficit that you're going to have at the end of the year with this new salary. Now let's game plan how to make up the deficit. Are we going to take it from other expenses, which I think we ultimately determined I do run things fairly lean. I don't have a lot of overages. There was some one-time expenses and things that wouldn't happen, but so we had that piece. So it was really about, okay, great. How are we going to grow revenue this year?
Yeah.
And we went through scenario planning then. And you asked me, okay, what are all the things you could offer? What are all the things you could do? All the ways you know how to make money. And so you set up all of these scenarios for me. And we kind of estimated what those items would bring in. And some of them are like really good ideas. Like one was being able to offer some of my training at a lower cost to make it more accessible. But what we realized was the amount of effort and infrastructure that needed to be put in place for that was not the highest and best use of my time.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really helped me make very strategic decisions about where to focus my energy on revenue. What was going to make the most impact for me personally? Now, when it comes to making something at a lower cost that's more accessible, from a coach's standpoint, like from my heart and my purpose, I want all of you to know what your big assumptions are and do the transformational work. And I want to make it so many people can do it. However, to make something like that sustainable, I need numbers. I need a high volume. And so this is sometimes where, depending on what kinds of products or services people offer, when they make a low cost product and they think, oh, that'll be easier for me to sell. I have not found that to be true. I have found it to be just as hard to sell lower priced items because you need so much volume compared to something that might be of a higher profit. And the same could go for, I think of investing in real estate. How many people take lesser margins because they think that's the only deal they can get, because they're maybe only looking for properties on the MLS and they're not actually spending more money to find deals no one else knows about. And so they're working super hard for these low profit margins when there's other things out there that if they actually took their time a little bit and worked in different ways, they'd see that it's more valuable for them. It's just as much work either way, is what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it helped me very quickly. I think you and I took 90 minutes. Mm-hmm. And we made so many decisions about where I was going to spend my time for the rest of this year. And we just made those decisions. I wasn't waffling anymore. I had numbers to back it up. And ultimately, I wanted to trickle in, just do a little work every month. Remember that? And so we had this tiered. I said, okay, let's bring in 2. You may have noticed on my emails, this is kind of like speaking out to the listeners. You may have noticed, like I said, I have space to bring in 3 new clients this month. And that was from our plan. Okay, trickle in 3 clients, trickle in 3 clients. What I learned is that was going to end up with a deficit at the end of the year. And so I said to you, I was like, well, what if we just do an open enrollment period in March, April, really focus on bringing more people in for the first half of the year. And I think I emailed you the other day and I was like, hey, if we just do this, that's going to make things balance out. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was powerful.
Absolutely. And I think that tracks the whole way. It's going back to the whole vision. Making more this year was really important to you. And that's the reason why I just put that in. Like, again, there would be a perspective of saying, Alecia, you can't afford this. But that's what was important to you. So to me, then the question becomes, this is important to you. This is what it looks like right now. How do we problem solve that? Mm-hmm. So it's a little bit of a different take on it. And then those planning pieces then leads to actions and decisions, like you're saying. So it kind of, again, it gives you the information that you need to get super clear about what you need to do. Mm-hmm. I think the playing with the variable playing is the most fun part, because you get to be like, well, what if we do this? And what if we do this? And if we do that, it actually isn't going to be kind of what we thought. Like, you see the number on pay. I remember the instant that you saw the number and you were like, well, if I just do this, it's way easier and it brings in more revenue. And it's not to say that that's not a great idea. And this is where it brings in the strategy. It's like that, because your goal is this for this year, that becomes, we need to put this on the shelf and think about the time where we do have the time and the resources to invest in that platform to deliver that product. So it's not in saying like, no, never, but this isn't the strategic moment for that. There's something else that will serve that purpose in a better way now. And then we can be strategic about the best time to launch that idea. And
it was really interesting to process that because I'm so purpose driven and I want to help so many people. And in your businesses, there's this give and receive. There's this time for you to I always talk about anybody who's going into business to make money, like you're going to be miserable. But if you're going into business because you have a passion and you have a purpose and you want to serve people, that is going to fill you up more than anything. If you can't feed yourself, that is going to burn you out. So it has to be both. And this is the year that I was really very clear that I've been doing this long enough now that there has to be some receive side of things that works for my family better. And so, when we think about building in the infrastructure, there may come a point, or there will come a point where, okay, great, my family's taken care of, I'm taken care of, we're thrilled. Okay, now it's time to serve more. Now the goal becomes, I want to reach 100,000 people. That's when those things come in. So I love how you said that. It's like, what's the actual goal this year? That's really powerful. I also remember, it was really funny. I have to tell you that I was going through and we hit that point. You said, we were checking in on my numbers and you said, I don't think we're going to be able to make that increase as rapidly as we want for you financially, for my personal pay, my salary. But I remember seeing it rise on the sheet and I said, I have a feeling about that. Like I have a feeling around that. And so as the mindset coach, I know that money is so closely linked to our mindsets. And so I wrote down on my paper, I was like, I have a feeling about seeing my increased pay. And it wasn't a good one. Mm-hmm. It was like, oh gosh. Can I actually do it? Can I actually sustain that? Can I be responsible enough? Can I really depend on myself that if I start paying myself that, now I'm going to have to pay all the taxes on that. Now I'm going to have all these other expenses that go along with paying myself at that level. Can I do it? And that's that fear of success. Mm-hmm. It's not that I fear that I'll fail. It's like you want to sometimes keep yourself small because it feels safer
and familiar
than going bigger, because a lot of times fear of success is related to a fear of responsibility and really not knowing and not trusting that you're capable. So I get to work through all that. I do. I help people do the work and I do the work on myself.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to point that out, that it was so interesting to really take the time to analyze how I was feeling around each of the numbers. Like I was so excited to pay other people, but then paying myself felt scary. Scary.
Absolutely. Well, and it's also stepping into something new and different than how it's been. And sometimes as much as we want to break into something new, like the way that it's been, like we know how to handle that, even if it's not working for us or serving us. So I hope you get more comfortable, and I know you will.
Oh, I'm going to do the work. I'm going to do the work.
Oh, yeah.
I'm determined. Like it's not, I see it as like, oh, cool. This is my next level. This is my next breakthrough. Because for a little bit, I was feeling like, okay, I've got this handled. I've got that handled. I've got my self-worth. I'm feeling comfortable there. I'm not afraid to be visible anymore. I used to have a big challenge around visibility, speaking my mind. And so I've kind of been waiting for that next level. And I knew it was financial. I knew there was that story. And so you've really given me so much to work with to create that next breakthrough. And you've been such an integral part of it. So I know you all want to work with Jenn because she's amazing. And she is totally booked up and has a waiting list. So what we want to do, I asked Jenn, put this date on your calendar, May 20th. Put this day on your calendar, May 20th at 1 p.m. Eastern time. Jenn is going to do a 90-minute session. And you're going to talk them through like some of the basics of even much deeper than what we talked about here regarding financial statements. Give me a little rundown of like what you're going to cover to help get some people breaking through some of their limiting beliefs around finances.
Sure. I think what we're going to tackle is just diving into understanding the concept around the numbers a little bit, understanding the power of the numbers. So starting from a place of what are the numbers? What do they mean? Are they more than just what I have to send to my CPA for the taxes every year because the IRS tells me that I have to? And that's a lot of people's framework when I start working with them is like, I have books because I have to, because it's for the IRS and it's for my taxes. My perspective is your finances are a treasure trove of information waiting for you to open that and give you so much information as what's working in your business and what's not working, being able to guide you and make different decisions. So I want to help people understand what the numbers mean, why we should look at them, how we should look at them, some key understanding of your financial statements. Because if you're not a financially minded person, grabbing a P&L, like nobody sits down with the P&L and a glass of coffee or wine or something just for fun, right? Like that's maybe me.
I might now.
Maybe me, but that's just typically not like, that's not easy to digest. So helping people become more familiar and comfortable so that they can look at their financial statements and understand what they mean in that way that now you have more comfort with it as well.
And and you're going to have space for Q&A as well in that. And so I think just like the little tweaks that you even made to the way that my books were being kept. And like you said, taking it so that I actually understood what information related to other information. I know that, just having the access to be able to learn from you. And I love that you're not teaching people to be a bookkeeper. You're not teaching people to do the work themselves. You're there as that resource for people to teach them how to be the CEO of their business and be able to look at their financials and make decisions for their business ahead of time and not look back in hindsight and say, oh, okay, well, that's what we did. So you're really teaching people to have that CEO mindset, which is so powerful.
Absolutely.
So mark your calendars. We will get more information. We don't have all the information. We literally just came up with this. This is what flow looks like. We literally just came up with this, just like the retreat, everyone. We're going to recreate it on the fly. But it's going to be so powerful. And it was the only way I could think for you to be able to get access to learning from Jenn and making you financially stronger without, since she's not available for you to work with one-on-one. So with all of that being said, Jenn, we're going to have you back on for more episodes because there's so much more I want to dive into with you.
Awesome.
But with all of that being said, everyone, I'm sending you so much love. And if Jonathan were here, he would say, be well. Thanks for listening to the Conscious Edge podcast. Make sure you subscribe and take a moment to be kind and share this episode with someone you care about. Leave a review to help us bring more compassionate leaders building businesses and creating wealth to the table. And for show notes, head over to consciousedge.com/podcast. This podcast and the linked materials are presented solely for general information, educational, and entertainment purposes and should not be taken as personal or medical advice or any kind of mental health treatment. Please consult a medical or mental health professional if you feel you need such services. Please be advised that all investing and entrepreneurial endeavors involve risk, and the use of the education and information on this podcast and linked materials is at the user's own risk.